We have special guests, Ukrainian graduate students from political science and diplomacy faculty of our Vytautas Magnus University. It's Kateryna, Valeria, and Tetiana, and of course, Professor Gintautas Mažeikis with us as always. And today we would like to talk about their experience studying international relationships, diplomacy, political science, critical studies at the Faculty of Political Science and Diplomacy. Because we have the ambassadors of the faculty, the Ukrainian first graduate students, from what I understand. What is your experience? Could you share?
Yes, I can start if you don't mind.
Yes.
Yeah. So for me, studying at Vytautas Magnus University was really transformative. It was not only academically, but a personal growth for me. And if you talk about this approach of VMU Artes Liberales, it offered really very multidimensional approach because it emphasized not only the core studies that I studied, but also my critical thinking, interdisciplinary studies, and personal growth. And while I specifically specialized in international relations and diplomacy, I also delved into other studies like cultural studies, like creative writing, philosophy. As well, I improved my English, specifically in my area in international relations and in diplomatic English. And I think this approach helped me a lot to better understand this complexity of global issues, so how politics, they in general are related to culture, to ethics, to society. And being this international student in Kaunas and VMU, and together connecting with this international community was another highlight, because I engaged with students, with professors from different backgrounds, and it really prepared me for my future path for this cross-cultural communication. And I think it's really a critical skill in diplomacy. So for me, it was this always very warm experience, when I think of that. And I really miss VMU. I really miss. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and maybe I will continue on about the approach of Artes Liberales. Of course, it's first and foremost an approach, a system that promotes critical thinking, creativity, and maybe the most important, civic engagement. And this is actually foundation for many universities, particularly in the United States. And I would say it's very cool that Vytautas Magnus University also applies same foundation. And secondly, Artes Liberales is also about having this warm, friendly atmosphere in studies between professors and students. And you can truly evaluate something when you have something to compare to. I don't have experience at the university in Ukraine, but if we look at the typical school setting, the atmosphere there between teachers and students is not as friendly. And usually you have to strictly follow the subordination rules and in general adhere to strict guidelines, starting from what you say to what you dress. And for me, Artes Liberales is more suitable for when your goal is to raise active citizens with ideas that drive for positive change. And I mean, it's open your mind, it encourages creativity and ensures that nobody will tell you what you can't do. So especially for us, as for creators, yes, I believe it's most important in university to gain knowledge and then know how to apply this knowledge in life. So yes, this approach helps us to skill how to apply our knowledges in real life.
So where did you apply, Tetiana, your knowledge?
Yeah, so after the graduation, I mean, we already began during my last semester of university, the creation of podcast. So this is a place where we applied our knowledges that we gained during our studies. And I would say that professors and lecturers and this approach of warm and friendly atmosphere, discussing, sharing ideas was truly an inspiration for it, because we received an inspiration to share knowledges that we get during the lectures. And Utopia Club podcast is what we created. It's educational podcast where we talk about social and political issues mainly.
I would like to ask Valeria, to turn from this academic area to your professional political and diplomacy area, And it's interesting for our audience, probably, and for Ukrainians, what kind of experience you bring from Lithuania to Ukraine, what your feelings about the democracy in Lithuania. You can be quite critical. It's not everything. It's very nice and pleasure. But in any way, this is very parliamentarian republic with very strong separation of powers, and very strong control of this separation. What do you think? What can you bring from Lithuania to Ukraine?
Yes. Thank you so much for your question. Yeah, I would like to give a short remark that I finished bachelor studies in VDO, so International Politics and Development Studies, and I also finished VDO this year, Diplomacy and International Relations, and I was always very active in any events that held it in video and across Lithuania. And the main things that I want to share about Lithuania to not only to Ukraine, to the global society, it's ideology. Lithuania has a really very strong ideology and very strong position regarding propaganda regarding Russian aggression in general. So it's something that Lithuanians has in their mind, in their hearts. It's something that's spreading everywhere. And for example, even if you will go to Latvia, for example, or to Estonia, to the other Baltic states, you will not have such same feelings that you have in Lithuania. And I want to emphasize that I visited Baltic Initiative with my colleague Kateryna this year that held it in Latvia, and we had so mixed feelings regarding these events. It was about EU enlargement, and they talked about Balkan states enlargement and Ukraine enlargement to European Union. And what we noticed that only Lithuanian side really support Ukraine, and they really support this promotion of ideology of democracy, freedom of speech, and other democratic values.
Geopolitical strategy, yes?
Yes.
You mean geopolitical strategy, orientation?
Absolutely right. And we were in shock about other things, that, for example, other people that were during this conference, they talk more about maybe we need to have some deadlines for EU enlargement. Maybe we can close in EU enlargement in 10 years. Maybe Balkan states should be the first one because they had conflict before Ukraine. Yeah, Ukraine has ongoing conflict, but maybe we need to focus on other countries. Maybe we need to change and shift our perception of Ukraine. And only Lithuania was such a country that insist very strictly about the issues that we should focus on Ukraine right now. We should focus on ongoing problems right now. And that's something that we have to understand, because when we are talking about propaganda all across Europe, all across the world, especially Russian propaganda, that's very difficult to share our own vision to the people that have maybe even lack of critical thinking. We understand that people are different, that you need to support Ukraine, you need to support democracy. Why people need to support it actually? They live their own life. They don't think about such issues. They can watch TV. They go to cafe, go to shops, and that's all. Why do they need to support us? Why do they need to support right now Baltic states in these geopolitical situations that we have right now? Why they need to support Eastern?
They want to postpone.
Yes.
They don't want commitment right now. Yes.
Of course, they don't, and maybe they will not have such commitments. They will not have, and I see like right now what we have like a tool to persuade these people some kind. It's emotional tools. That's not about sharing information. That's about sharing emotions. That's about sharing maybe some kind of films, some kind of creative things that we can share with people. Some kind that's very actually easy to perceive for people.
I would say that's nice that you're from Ukraine, and the same we try to do with Belarusian, opposition Belarusian students. It's always quite successfully. But some people, who come from Azerbaijan or even from Georgia, it's not always successful. Everything depends how people from different countries are ready to accept democracy. Because you feel it that in Lithuania, because we broke with Soviet Union in 1990, even earlier than everybody starts. Because for us it never was obvious that this is very great evil, and we cannot be together no 1 minute, no 1 second, if it is possible. So we would like to support all the people who who have very similar feelings. Do you think that with the same consciousness and feeling is going to in Ukraine now? Do people feel the same critical approach to the Soviet Union, heritage and everything what comes from Russia? Do they consider in the same critically? How do you think?
I'm not sure that all Ukrainians have right now these feelings like to let Soviet Union like experience like on the back, because we have different generations, and of course like young people they more support like democracy, European values, this way to Europe, but we have old generation as well, and what old generation see right now that okay, during this path to Europe we have a war, during Soviet Union times we didn't have a war, and how to change this perception, that's completely difficult.
Yeah, you see that in Lithuania we think differently, that where we have a Second World War and we hadn't peace after Second World War. We don't consider, this Soviet period as peaceful period. This is a difference.
Occupation.
For us, it was like next occupation. It's not like liberation or peaceful time, but I am sure that in Western Ukraine, people think very similarly. It's not about a peaceful and good period, but on some kind of the next occupation, second occupation. What's Tatiana or Kateryna, your opinion about it?
Yes, of course. I think people in Western Ukraine, they were more pro-Ukrainian always. It comes from the history, because this part of Ukraine was in Austro-Hungarian Empire, and it was always more close to these Western values and Western pro-views. And the other part, historically, Central Ukraine, Eastern Ukraine, Southern Ukraine was in Russian Empire. And of course, it's because of historical issues, it was more pro-Russian. But still we see when the war has come, more people, more and more from day to day, we understand how much we need to forget about everything Russian, about everything Soviet, about these Soviet values. If we can say like that, there were no values, of course, there. So now Ukrainian generation, Ukrainian society is very much changing, especially this new generation of young people, as Valeria mentioned, who really promote this values of freedom, of democracy, freedom of speech. So I believe that now situation in Ukraine is only changing for better.
Yes, and I totally agree with Kateryna and Valeria, because now, it's very interesting to live in such time and to be a part of it. Because me, as a person from Eastern Ukraine, I spoke Russian language for 20 years of my life.
So
Because
maybe it's your
in
native
Kharkiv,
language. It's
my
your native.
native is Ukrainian.
Ukrainian,
Yes, but
not Russian.
no, I'm from Kharkiv, and there many people speak Russian language. And until the war began, we didn't even consider that this is an issue in Ukraine. But now, I'm trying to ask myself why I live in Ukraine, why I speak Russian language if I live in Ukraine. And very interesting, in my city, I went to Ukrainian school. There, all subjects were in Ukrainian language, but we had schools that were Russian schools in Russian language for people who just want to study in Russian language. For me now, it sounds strange. It sounds something unbelievable, in our times. Yeah, so my friends, me, we change our directions of what a citizen we want to be. If we want to speak Ukrainian or if we will choose to speak Russian language. And this is a lot of things are changing inside the country and inside every citizen of Ukraine right now.
I have one question for all of three of you, because you mentioned that you are, Vio and I, not only international relationships students and some experience in this, but as well diplomacy. And now we see that this terrible Russian aggression, this war, turns step by step, very slowly, from the military stage to the diplomatic challenges, And how do you think, about the value of diplomacy, How do you think, is it applicable now for Ukrainian situation, this for example, do people of Ukraine understand the value of diplomacy, or they think they're only about warfare?
I can answer. Firstly, about my opinion, I think in general, war in Ukraine shows for all of us, it's like a strong reminder why diplomacy matters. Because this war is not just about territorial disputes, it's a war of values. It's freedom against oppression, truth versus propaganda. So for me, as the person with the background of diplomacy and international relations, I personally see this urgent need for sustained dialogue, for humanitarian aid, for this strategic planning to ensure this lasting peace. But if we talk about people in Ukraine now, how we see, do we need negotiations with Russia or no? The society has divided because we have people who are already very tired of war and they want to stop it as fast as it's possible and to sit at the negotiations table with Russia. But at the same time, we have people, especially families that have warriors or, for example, mothers whose sons are fighting now in the front, and soldiers who are totally against this because they say, how can we sit at the negotiations table with the terrorists? And I understand it as well. So I can say that now our generation society is very much divided and we don't know what would be better. We want to stop this war. We want to stop this death every day. But at the same time, we don't know if now diplomacy and negotiations could really help in this situation.
Yeah, but it seems like Zelensky manages to be diplomatic with the Western allies and at the same time tough against Russian propaganda, isn't it?
Yes, of course, and I think it's very strong position. I think he's doing very right and very big work in diplomatic matters.
Yeah, I would like to ask Tetiana or Valeria, as well about this diplomatic challenges. That the diplomacy doesn't mean the only negotiation with Russia. Russia can be even outside of diplomatic affairs, But the question is about the world. It's not only about Russia. It's not only to speak with madmen, that why do you need to negotiate with terrorists and madmen? The problem is about diplomacy with the other countries, with for example, neighbor country Hungary, What does mean diplomacy with them? Or with Slovakia, that they turn from supporting of you, they were very active supporters of Ukraine and then immediately changed and became pro-Moscow country. This is diplomacy. Diplomacy as well about, United Nations, diplomacy about India and China. This is diplomacy, big diplomacy challenges, many of them issues, not only international relationships, but as well cultural diplomacy. And how do you think, do people of Ukraine and politicians understand the value and necessity of the diplomatic, solutions? Sometimes it looks like, this war rhetoric, hide the need of diplomacy or diplomatic skills. What's your opinion about Ukrainian diplomatic skills, not regarding directly to Russia, but broader sense in this world affairs?
Yes, if we are talking about like diplomacy in general, like from the side from the Ukrainian side, we need to emphasize, I guess, crisis leadership that our president has right now, because all the diplomatic stand that we have right now, it's all about crisis, it's all about war, it's all about how to manage this situation right now. And of course, Ukraine strive to have so many agreements as we can to have with other countries, like military agreements, economic agreements, cultural agreements, to create new alliances, to create new unions, and to understand who is our friend right now and who is not. And due to the fact that we try to have this legal basis on our agreements, on our unions, that's very important to highlight the importance of diplomacy during this war stance, during this crisis. I guess it's the most crucial point right now. And if we are talking, for example, about United Nations or other organizations like transatlantic organizations, that all depends on the region and crisis that they try to manage using diplomatic instruments. But if we're talking about our global crisis, about our war, we have limited diplomatic instruments because we have limited time and we have limited resources, and we don't have such support that we need. Of course, all countries strive to support us, all countries that support Ukraine actually, who are friends and who are not corrupted by Russian money and Russian propaganda and other issues. But these countries that really try to help Ukraine, we understand that they did a lot, but not enough at all, because we still don't have enough resources to be against Russia, to be against aggression. We don't have enough resources even to promote our soft power. If we're talking about diplomacy, first of all, it's about soft power. It's about this diplomatic and democratic instruments that we can have impact on the nations, not only on the leaders. Of course, we deal with leaders. That's their obligations to deal with Ukraine right now. That's common value to deal with Ukraine, but not to the people. And we couldn't have such impact on France, for example, where people don't support a lot military aid to Ukraine, or to German people. Why we have such situation? Because we don't have resources. That's the question. And to promote our diplomacy, we need money for that. I guess the answer is simple. And of course, we need maybe more skilled diplomats in Ukrainian government as well, because we have a lot of people from these not pro-European values in Ukrainian parliament even right now, and on Ukrainian missions. Of course, we have our representatives, very good one, very smart one, with great experience, with very good values, but still we need to have more people to have such a Euro-integration of diplomatic values as well. We need more people from Euro, from European governments that can help Ukraine from this point of interconnections with European delegations and exchange of such experiences on this diplomatic basis.
Yes, I would just sum up that diplomacy is highly relevant for international support, and Ukraine is in need for all international support that it can get. So, as Valeria also said before, that our leaders, for example, Zelensky, he's a great wartime leader. He's a great wartime leader. With his help, we attracted a lot of support from Western countries, right? And as of countries that turned their backs to Ukraine, I have a question: if they're not afraid of escalation of war, because it's very easy to be in another country and to evaluate the war when it's not here. But even in Baltic states, right, we're now in Lithuania, I think we should feel that war is closer than we think. And yeah, in other countries, in, for example, Serbia, yes, the countries that turned their back to us, are they not afraid of escalation? So
Yeah,
I
you
think
don't.
it's a question of every country, yeah, inside.
You don't need to explain about escalation only for two countries, you know, for Poland and Lithuania, who every day prepares for the possible war. The other countries need this kind of explanation as well. But my question is as well quite the next provocative. You remember, probably you hear that a few days ago there was some protest action in Berlin. A Russian opposition organized that Ilya Yashin, Kara-Murza, and Navalnaya. They organized them, and there was some smart, quite small, I would say, conflict with Ukrainian embassy, which, according to officials, were not very happy from this, pro-Russian action in Berlin. Despite this action was against Putin, but not too much pro-Ukrainian, I would say. This was as well, you see, diplomatic challenge. You studied in Vytautas Magnus University in Kaunas. Kaunas is not a very, Russian city where you could met their oppositions, very like Lviv, rather, that's far away from Russia. But, it's differently in Vilnius, in the capital, where many of Russian opposition works. And my question is, what is your opinion about, this diplomatic relationships or possibility of diplomatic relationships with a Russian opposition who fights against Putin, but this question, as you see, quite ambiguous. It's not very clear, and
Navalny's team is anti Putin's regime, yet not so clear how much it's pro-Ukrainian.
Yeah. They from the one side they anti-Putinist, from the other side they invite not to kill Russian soldiers. That's very ambiguous, I would say, situation. What is your opinion? But not from this in general political, but what do you see from diplomatic point of view? How, for example, Ukrainian embassies or you, like representatives of Ukraine, how can you work with this topic?
Personally, if I would be already a working practical diplomat, I wouldn't like that Ukraine would focus very big attention on collaboration with such Russian opposition, because I believe we should more focus on creating our own way of diplomacy, how Ukraine should act, not to focus our attention again on Russia, how we need to find ways how to collaborate even with Russian opposition. So personally, I think that it shouldn't be very much specified now on that point.
I can add that I guess we had this window of collaboration with the Russian opposition only when the full-scale war started. But Russian opposition was very, very weak, and they didn't have any instruments that could have impact on their society, first of all. And when we see right now such kind of meetings and protests, I have just one question. Do you really think that you will have impact during such events, during these meetings, because you didn't try even to unite your people like on a very level, maybe creative level, like musicians, for example, they can spread information about values, about Ukraine, or maybe even if not about Ukraine, but about values, about democracy, how to fight with authoritarian regimes. They have like several artists that against this regime, and several people that against Putin's regime, like in general, and that's all. And how we can support people, they don't have real strategy what to do. Of course, they can be invited even to the White House of USA and talk with very famous political figures, but that's all. Okay, it can be like small part of soft power, but right now they just grabbed attention and don't make enough efforts to spread this information, to really have impact on their society, to create mechanism how to impact on the society, to create change how to impact. So they have nothing right now, I guess, nothing. Of course, these people are very good that they try to do something, that they against the regime, that they are not staying in Russia and support Putin. Of course, it's very good. But really what they have right now, where are their instruments, what the Russians should do to be against Putin, to be against this regime, totalitarian regime, what they should do. Maybe a lot of people could follow them, could really do something that they will tell, okay, do this, do this, do this. This is our plan, this is our strategy, but they don't have plan. Yeah, that's my like perception.
Yeah,
and, I would say
yes,
I don't want
Tetiana,
to.
Please.
I don't want to sound very rude, but my position is kind of radical at this point. I think, well, not diplomatic at all, I would say, but I think all Ukrainians has trust issues now with any Russian groups, right? So for us, it's hard to cooperate with Russian communities when we know that, well, Russian-speaking people are exposed to Russian-speaking television, for example. Yes, it's a very simple issue.
You mean Ukrainian Russian-speaking? You mean
What?
Ukrainian Russian-speaking exposed to Russian television?
Ukrainian Russian-speaking, some of them, right? Or in Vilnius, if we take even Lithuania, Vytautas, it's Russian-speaking city. They watch, they listen Ukrainian, Russian television, radio, and so on. You want it or not, you start to believe what you see, what you hear. So for us, we don't have a trust in people who support Russian communities in Ukraine or in other countries.
Because they might be victims of Russian propaganda, since they are exposed
yes, it's my opinion.
to their codes.
Yes, so we can talk to people about some Ukrainian issues which they are not totally know about, like deep information. Yes, history, some information, and they can evaluate their opinion from their perspectives, and their perspectives mostly are pro-Russian, as I see it.
And next, my question, which is as well, I would say, quite urgent for Poles, for Polish people, who speaks about memory after in the period of Second World War. This is, as I remember, Volyn massacre. And, this is from time to time, this can be obstacle in relationships with Polish society. It's not about Poland as a country, but sometimes even politicians mention about it. We don't have such problems between Lithuania and Ukraine, even in the period after Second World War, in this partisan time, which we remember that the people from Ukraine even tried to help all Lithuanian, partisans. In this time we remember about, and this is, it's not about our relationships, but from the other side, from time to time, we hear in Lithuania about some obstacles between, Ukraine and Poland, and it's not always clear what does it mean and how it can be solved. For sure, it's a diplomatic question. It's not about, some kind of economical or the other solutions. This is only diplomatic and education probably question. But in any way, how do you see this problem? How do you understand this problem? Does it actually relevant problem for contemporary, or do you think it's rather propaganda, anti-Ukrainian, anti-Poland, relationships?
I think it's a very sensitive question, And I believe Ukraine and Poland have totally different imaginations of how this tragedy looks like. Because as Ukrainians, we know that it started firstly from Polish side, all these brutal actions, and then, of course, Ukraine answered. So I can say that both sides were guilty, and I think we understand our guilt, but Polish side also should understand our guilt. And I think we do not focus now our attention on this in relations with Poland, because we still understand how much Poland has helped us in the beginning and is still helping now. How many refugees Poland accepted during wartime and still continues to help us. So I believe we should continue our diplomatic relations and not to focus too much attention on that. When the war will be over, when Ukraine will win, then I think we should focus our attention on that. But I don't think now it's a very big issue. I think we should be thankful to Poland for its help, and that's what really matters.
Yeah, memory. What you are saying is that memory traumas of the past should wait till peaceful time,
Yes.
when we, with the historians, with some representatives of culture, would look
that's
for
not the biggest issue now.
transcultural memory. Yeah, building. Yeah. Valeria, Tetiana, would you like to add anything on this? Or?
I would say it's a very sensitive question, because when you referred to Volyn massacre, I guess you're referring to Stepan Bandera. Probably, yes, because as we know, in Ukraine, he's a national hero, but many people in Poland perceive him as murderer, right? So, to speak up about such things, I think you should be very educated in history. Yes, from what we see from our history in Ukraine, of course, we believe in it. And Volyn, for example, massacre wasn't it wasn't on Stepan Bandera, because at this time he was imprisoned. So, but I know that a lot of Poland people, they hate Ukrainians and our ideologies and so on for that. So I would say that it is a matter of history, what was in the past, yes, but what we see now, our relations with Poland is very friendly. They help Ukraine a lot, and of course we are very grateful for all Poland for that. So yes, we had our relationship in past, which can be, of course, be a topic for another discussion, I would say. Yes, because again, different perspectives of everybody. But right now, yes, I would say that if we have even such things as in social media, yes, I saw a lot of comments on posts about Bandera, that how can you support Bandera when he was a leader of Volyn massacre and so on. And I would say that such comments are from collaborators, Polish collaborators, that try to kill this unity of Ukrainian people, Ukrainian unity with international communities and so on. Because right now, as never, we should be united. It's the most important, to share same values, for share same democratic values. It's the most important right now.
And before we end our this lovely discussion, I'd like to ask the last question. How did you choose Kaunas Vytautas Magnus University and political science and diplomacy faculty? How come that you ended up in Kaunas on Putvinskio Street rather than in Wrocław or in Vilnius or in Warsaw? What is your story?
I would like to start. as I studied in Ukraine when I was like 16 years old. I applied to the Mariupol State University, and I was gaining my bachelor degree in journalism. And I remember the time that the first time I opened the book of Noam Chomsky, and I was so interested about Arab Spring, and I thought, wow, that's something that catch my mind. Maybe I need to continue, like to go deeper to such like events, like researchers, etc., etc. And after 2 years of studying in journalism, I got a grant and I applied like to Kaunas, to Vytautas Magnus University, and I was finishing 2 universities in the same time, as why I have like 2 bachelor degree. And when the war started, I was in Ukraine with my parents. I already like finished my bachelor degree, and I remember that I truly understand that I should be in Lithuania at that time. During the wartime, of course, I understood the risks because Lithuania is very close to Russia and the war can start. But I remembered my feelings that when I was in Lithuania, that all people support me, and I saw Lithuanians and I saw their very strict position regarding all issues, even despite of the Russian propaganda in percentage that even we saw during the elections right now. But still, Lithuanians are very strong supporter of democracy and democratic values, and even maybe much more than in Central Europe, because they understand the danger. That's why I came back and applied for the master degree at Vytautas Magnus University and finished, and I'm fully glad that I did such a good like steps in my life.
If you will continue studies about Noam Chomsky, please come to me. I'm a big fan of him. Okay.
Oh, thank you so much. I would really glad to have some discussions about him.
If you don't mind, I can continue about my experience. So
Yes.
for me, Kaunas is a very special city because even though I moved here to live since the war started, but I visited Kaunas, I think 15 times before that. Since I was 10, I was coming to Lithuania for the artistic festival near the Kaunas Castle, Kauno Pilyje. And for me, in general, Lithuania and Kaunas always were very special. It was like second home. And when the war has started, I had even no thoughts about choosing other country, because here I had friends of the family and they were the first people who called and invited us to come. And it one more time shows that Lithuanians are very strong supporters of Ukraine. So in Ukraine, I finished Kyiv National Taras Shevchenko University, and I chose law. But what's a very interesting story, when I was thinking after school what to choose, I was thinking about diplomacy. But I thought perhaps law would be more reliable, and I chose law. Of course, I do not regret, because law is helping me throughout all my life, and it's very much related to diplomacy, international relations as well. But when I moved here, and I thought that perhaps I need to get one more degree, master's degree. And I looked at the different programs and I chose law. But the thing was that this program didn't start it because it didn't have enough people. And the other programs that university offered me was either business or diplomacy and international relations. And I was like, yes, it's a sign. I wanted to do that in the past in Ukraine, but I can try it here. So I do not regret that I chose diplomacy, international relations. And in general, for me, this experience is really invaluable, and the life in Kaunas is truly vibrant. And I'm very thankful that I met here such friends, my colleagues. It's also very, very precious for me that we found such community and we became friends. It's very important.
Great.
And I will finish probably with my story. I came here 6, maybe 7 years ago already. So as maybe many of you know that Lithuania is a country of basketball. So at that time I was playing basketball, but I finished. So Lithuania's basketball future is safe because I'm not there anymore. And when I finished my sport career, I decided I had a possibility to go back to Ukraine, or I had a possibility to stay in Lithuania. And somehow I felt that this city is right for young people. You know, here I feel a lot of place to create, because there are not a lot of things that there are in Ukraine, but you don't have them in Lithuania. So I saw a lot of place to create something new in Lithuania, to bring maybe some ideas, you know, and that's when I decided that I will stay to study in university in Kaunas, in Lithuania. And especially international politics was interesting for me because, well, I was 11 when my dance started, and when I was 11, I didn't really understand what is going on in Ukraine, why we have this kind of relationship with Russia, right? So for me, it was very interesting to get knowledge of what is going on around the world, because when you start, when I changed countries, I understood that each nation, each country is very different. And for me, it was very interesting to know how it's connected, what rules, world rules we have in the world. So yes, and international politics and development studies pretty much helped me with this. And I'm very happy that at the end I met Valeria and Kateryna, and now we have a very good ideas that we brought to Kaunas, and yes, I'm just very happy about that. That I made this decision.
So thank you very much for sharing your stories. Thank you, Valeria, Kateryna, and Tetiana, for also speaking up your minds about Ukraine's needs in these war conditions, yet trying to integrate into European Union with our common ideals for sovereignty, for independence. Thank you very much, and we do see you as the ambassadors of political science and diplomacy faculty. Once again, thank you.
So much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.